Okay, we are on chapter 5. It's termed group souls. And we're going to go through the meaning of the term, so this should be incredibly interesting here. Speaking generally, a group soul is a collection of permanent triads in a triple envelope of monadic essence. This description is true of all group souls functioning on the physical plane, but gives no idea of the extreme complexity of the subject of group souls, for they divide and subdivide constantly, the contents of each division and subdivision decreasing in number as evolution goes on, until at last a group soul encloses but a single triad, to which it may continue for many births to discharge the protective and nutrient functions of a group soul, while no longer technically describable as one, the group having separated off into its constituent parts. 7 group souls are to be seen functioning on the physical plane before any form appears. They first show themselves as vague, filmy forms, one in each stream of the second life wave, on the mental plane, becoming more clearly outlined on the astral, and yet more so on the physical. They float in the great ocean of matter as balloons might float in the sea. Observing them more closely, we see 3 separate layers of matter forming an envelope which contains innumerable triads. Before any mineralization has taken place, no golden life web is, of course, visible around these. Only the radiant golden threads which connect them with their present jiva atmas are to be seen, shining with that strange luster which belongs to their birth plane. The innermost of these 3 layers consists of physical monadic essence. That is, the layer is composed of atoms of the physical plane, ensouled with the life of the second logos. And at first sight, these innermost layers appear to be identical in the 7 group souls. But closer observation reveals that each layer is formed of atoms from only one of the 7 matter groups before described. Each group soul, therefore, differs in material constitution from all the rest, and the contained triads in each belong to the same matter group. The second layer of the group soul envelope is composed of astral monadic essence belonging to the same matter group as the first, and the third of units of the 4th subplane of mental matter of that same type. This triple envelope is the protector and nourisher of the triads contained within it, veritable embryos incapable as yet of separate independent activity. And the third of units of the 4th subplane of the mental matter of the same type. So I'm just going to read this again so to see, and we're absorbing this. We're not necessarily trying to understand completely, right? So it will, we are, this is our invocation to know the material. So the second layer of the group soul envelope is composed of astral monadic essence belonging to the same matter group as the first, and the third of units of this fourth subplane of mental matter of the same type. Okay, so we're talking about the mental unit. This triple envelope, and these are the three lower worlds, this triple envelope is the protector and nourisher of the triads contained within it, veritable embryos incapable as yet of separate independent activity. So this is in the mind at this point, is how I'm seeing it. The 7 group souls soon multiply, division going on continually with the multiplication of distinct subtypes as the immediate forerunners of the chemical elements appear, to be followed by the elements themselves and the minerals formed from them. The laws of space, for instance, apart from the specialization of the contents of the group soul, the permanent triads may lead to a division of it. Thus, a vein of gold in Australia may lead to the mineralization of many such triads within a single envelope, while the laying down of another vein in a distant place, say the Rocky Mountains, may lead to the division of this envelope and the transfer of part of its contents to America in their own envelope. But the more important causes which bring about subdivisions will be explained in the course of our study. The group soul and its contents divide by fission, like an ordinary cell. 1 becomes 2, 2, 4, and so on. All the triads have to pass through the mineral kingdom, the place in which matter reaches its grossest form, and the place where the great wave reaches the limit of its descent and turns to begin its upward climbing. So this is the densest, most dense vibration here that we're talking about. So here it is that physical consciousness must awaken. Life must now turn definitely outwards and recognize contact with our lives in an external world. Now, the evolution of each being in these early stages depends chiefly on the cherishing life of the Logos and partly on the cooperating guidance of the Shining Ones, and partly on its own blind pressure against the limits of its enclosing form. So we're experiencing this, this tension at this point. I want to say, there's this crisis that we're in the midst of, and this tension has been being built, and it is being built. And we can look at the words pressure against the limits to see that. So I've compared and let me just say that crisis, tension, and emergence are the 3 stages of growth. So I've compared the evolution through the mineral, vegetable, and animal kingdoms to an antenatal period, and the resemblance is exact. As the child is nourished by the life streams of the mother, so does the protective envelope of the group soul nourish the lives within it, receiving and distributing the experiences gathered in. The circulating life is the life of the parent. The young plants, the young animals, the young human beings are not ready for independent life as yet, but must draw nourishment from the parent. And so these germinating lives in the mineral kingdom are nourished by the group souls, by the envelopes of monadic essence, thrilling with logic life. A very fair picture of this stage may be seen in the carpel of a plant, in which the ovules gradually appear, becoming more and more independent. For the sake of clear conception, we may glance rapidly forward over the changes through which the group soul passes, as its contents evolve, before going into details. During the mineral evolution, the habitat of the group soul may be said to be that of its densest envelope, the physical. Its most active working is on the physical plane. As its content pass onwards into the vegetable kingdom and descend through it, the physical envelope slowly disappears, as though absorbed by the contents for the strengthening of their own etheric bodies, and its activity is transferred to the astral plane to the nourishing of the astral bodies of the contained triads. As these develop yet further and pass into the animal kingdom, the astral envelope is similarly absorbed, and the activity of the group soul is transferred to the mental plane, and it nourishes the inchoate mental bodies and shapes them gradually into less vagueness of outline. When the group soul contains but a single triad, and has nourished this into readiness for the reception of the third outpouring, what is left of it disintegrates into matter of the third subplane and becomes a constituent part of the causal body, formed by the downpouring from above meeting the upward drawn column from below, to use the graphic waterspout simile. Now we're talking about this lower three down here, and right now we're at the third subplane, which is the causal body. This is the soul. This is the abstract mental. Then is the reincarnating ego born into independent manifestation. The guarded antenatal life is over. All right, we're into the second part of this now. It is on the physical plane, all the way down at the bottom here, on the right. So it is on the physical plane that consciousness must first evolve into self-consciousness, must become aware of an external world that makes impacts on it, and must learn to refer those impacts to an external world and to realize as its own the changes which it undergoes in consequence of those impacts. By prolonged experience, it will learn to identify with itself the feeling of pleasure or pain that follows the impact, and to regard as not itself that which touches its external surface. It will thus make its first rough distinction of not I and I. As experience increases, the I will retreat ever inwards, and the one veil of matter after another will be relegated outwards as belonging to the not I. But while its connotations change, this fundamental distinction between subject and object will ever remain. I is the willing, thinking, acting consciousness, while the not I is all as to which it wills, about which it thinks, and on which it acts. We shall have to consider later the way in which consciousness becomes self-consciousness, but at present we are concerned only with its expression in forms and the part played by the forms. This consciousness awakens on the physical plane, and its expression is the permanent atom. In this it lies sleeping, sleeps in the mineral, and therein some awakening to lighter slumber must take place, so that it may be roused out of this deep dreamless sleep and become sufficiently active to pass on into the next stage. It dreams in the vegetable. Now the second logos, acting in the envelope of the group souls, energizes the permanent physical atoms, and by the mediation of the shining ones, as we have seen, plunges them into various conditions offered by the mineral kingdom, where each attaches to itself many mineral particles. At once, here we see a large variety of possible impacts, leading to a variety of experiences, and so presently to lines of cleavage in a group soul. Some will be whirled high in air, to fall in torrents of burning lava. Some will be exposed to Arctic cold, others to tropic heat. Some will be crushed and sheathed in molten metal in the bowels of the earth. Some will be in the sand, tossed roughly by rushing billows. Infinite variety of external impacts will shake and strike and burn and freeze, and in vague answers of sympathetic vibrations will the deep slumbering consciousness respond. When any permanent atom has reached a certain responsiveness, or when a mineral form, i.e. the particles to which a permanent atom has attached itself, is broken up, the group soul draws that atom from its encasement. All the experiences acquired by that atom, and that means the vibrations it has been forced to execute, remain as powers of vibrating in particular ways, or as vibratory powers. That is the outcome of its life in a form. The permanent atom, losing its embodiment and remaining for a while naked, as it were, in its group soul, and continuing to repeat these vibrations, to go over within itself its life experiences, sets up pulses which run through the envelope of the group soul, and are thus conveyed to other permanent atoms. Thus each affects and helps all the others while remaining itself. The permanent atoms, which have had experiences similar in character, will be more strongly affected by each other than will be those whose experience have been very different, and thus there will be a certain segregation going on within the group soul, and presently a filmy separating wall will grow inwards from the envelope and divide these segregated groups from each other, and so there will be an ever-increasing number of group souls with contexts showing an ever-increasing distinction of consciousness while sharing fundamental characteristics. Now, the responses of consciousness to external stimuli in the mineral kingdom are far greater than many quite realize, and some of them are of a nature which shows that there is a dawning of consciousness also in the astral permanent atom. For chemical elements exhibit distinct mutual attractions, and chemical marital relationships are continually disorganized by the intrusion of couples, one or other of which has a stronger affinity for one of the other partners in the earlier marriage than the original mate. And we see this daily. Right? Thus, a hitherto mutually faithful couple forming a silver salt will suddenly prove faithless to each other if another couple, hydrochloric acid, enters their peaceful household, and the silver will pounce upon the chlorine and take her to wife, preferring her to his former mate, and set up a new household as silver chloride, leaving the deserted hydrogen to mate with his own forsaken partner. Wherever these active interchanges go on, there is a slight stir in the astral atom in consequence of the violent physical vibrations set up by the violent wrenching apart and formation of intimate ties, and vague internal thrillings appear. The astral must be roused from the physical, and consciousness on the physical plane will long take the lead in evolution. Still, a little cloud of astral matter is drawn round the permanent astral atom by these slight thrillings, but it is very loosely held and seems to be quite unorganized. There does not seem to be any vibration in the mental atom at this stage. After ages of experience in the mineral kingdom, some of the permanent atoms will be ready to pass into the vegetable kingdom and will be distributed by the agency of the shining ones over the vegetable world. It is not to be supposed that every blade of grass, every plant, has a permanent atom within it, evolving to humanity during the life of this system. Just as the mineral kingdom, so here, the vegetable kingdom forms the field of evolution for these permanent atoms, and the shining ones guide them to habitat after habitat, so that they may experience the vibrations that affect the vegetable world, and again store up these as vibratory powers in the same fashion as before. The principles of interchange and of consequent segregation work out as before, and the group souls in each stream of evolution become more numerous and more different in their leading characteristics. At our present stage of knowledge, the laws according to which permanent atoms in a group soul are plunged into the kingdoms of nature are by no means clear. Many things seem to indicate that the evolution of the mineral, vegetable, and the lowest part of the animal kingdom belong more to the evolution of the earth itself than to that of the jiva atmas representing the monads who are revolving within the solar system and who come in due course to this earth to pursue their own evolution by utilizing the conditions it affords. Grass and small plants of every kind seem to be related to the earth as a man's hairs are related to his body, and not to be connected with the monads represented by jiva atmas in our fivefold universe. The life in them, holding them together as forms, appears to be that of the second logos, and the life in the atoms of molecules composing them to be that of the third logos, appropriated and modified by the planetary logos of our system of chains, and further appropriated and modified by the spirit of the earth, an entity wrapped in great obscurity. These kingdoms offer a field for the evolution of the jiva atmas truly, but do not exist apparently wholly for this purpose. We find permanent atoms scattered through the mineral and vegetable kingdoms, but are unable to pierce to the reasons which govern their distribution. A permanent atom may be found in a pearl and a ruby and a diamond. Many may be found scattered through veins of ore and so on. On the other hand, much mineral does not seem to contain any. So it's short-lived plants. But in plants of long continuance, such as trees, permanent atoms are constantly found. But here again, the life of the tree seems to be more closely related to the diva evolution than to the evolution of the consciousness to which the permanent atom is attached. It is rather as though advantage were taken of the evolution of life and consciousness in the tree for the benefit of the permanent atom. It seems to live there more as a parasite, profiting by the more highly evolved life in which it is bathed. The fact is that our knowledge on these points is extremely fragmentary so far. There is more activity perceptible in the astral permanent atom during the course of the accumulation of vegetable experiences by the physical, and it attracts round itself astral matter, which is arranged by the shining ones in a rather more definite way. In the long life of a forest tree, the growing aggregation of astral matter develops itself in all directions as the astral form of the tree and the consciousness attached to the permanent atoms shares to some extent that of its surroundings, experiencing through that astral form the vibrations causing massive pleasure and discomfort. These vibrations being the result of those set up in the physical tree by the sunshine and storm, wind and rain, cold and heat. With the perishing of such a tree, the permanent astral atom retreats to its group soul, now established on the astral plane with a rich store of experiences shared in the manner before described. Further, as the consciousness becomes more responsive in the astral, it sends little thrills downwards to the physical plane, and these give rise to the feelings felt as though in the physical, but really derived from the astral. Oh wow, okay. So it's all coming from above, right? So it's coming from. Where there has been a long separate life, as in a tree, the permanent mental unit will also begin to attract round itself a little cloud of mental matter, and on this, the recurrence of seasons will slowly impress itself as a faint memory, which becomes inevitably a faint anticipation. At last, some of the permanent physical atoms are ready to pass on into the animal kingdom, and once more the agency of the shining ones guides them into animal forms. During the later stages of their evolution in their vegetable world, it appears to be the rule that each triad, physical and astral atoms and mental unit, shall have a prolonged experience in a single form, so that some thrills of mental life may be experienced, and the triad may thus be prepared to profit by the wandering life of the animal. But it also appears that in some cases the passage into the animal kingdom is made at an earlier stage, and that the first thrill in the mental unit occurs in some of the stationary forms of the animal life and in very lowly animal organisms. In the lowest types of animals, conditions similar to those described as existing in the mineral and vegetable kingdoms also appear to prevail. Microbes, amoeba, hydra, etc., only show a permanent atom as a visitor now and again, and obviously in no way depend upon it for life and growth, nor do they break up when the permanent atom is withdrawn. They are hosts, not bodies formed around a permanent atom. and it is noteworthy that at this stage the golden life web in no way represents the organization of the host's body, but merely acts as rootlets act in the soil, attaching particles of soil to themselves and sucking therefrom nourishment. The permanent atoms in the animal kingdom have received and stored up many experiences before they are used by the shining ones as centers round which forms are to be built. Needless to say that in the animal kingdom, the permanent atoms receive far more varied vibrations than in the lower kingdoms, and consequently differentiate more quickly the number of triads in the group souls, diminishing rapidly as this differentiation proceeds, and the multiplication of group souls therefore going on with increasing rapidity. As the period of individuality approaches, each separate triad becomes possessed of its own envelope obtained from the group soul and takes on successive embodiments as a separate entity, though still within the enveloping case of protecting and nourishing monadic essence. Large numbers of the higher animals in a state of domestication have reached this stage and have really become separate reincarnating entities, although not as yet possessing a causal body. The mark of what is usually called individualization. The envelope derived from the group soul serves the purpose of a causal body, but consists only of the third layer, as previously indicated, and is therefore composed of molecules derived from the fourth grade of mental matter, that which corresponds to the coarsest ether of the physical plane. Following the analogy of human antenatal life, we see that this stage corresponds with its last 2 months. A 7-month babe may be born and may survive, but it will be stronger, healthier, more vigorous if it profits for yet another 2 months by its mother's shielding and nourishing life. So it is better for the normal development of the ego that it should not too hastily burst the envelope of the group soul, but should still absorb life through it and strengthen from its constituents the finest part of its own mental body. When that body has reached its limit of growth under these shielded conditions, the envelope disintegrates into the finer molecules of the subplane above it and becomes, as above said, part of the causal body. It is the knowledge of these facts that has sometimes caused occultists to warn people who are very fond of animals not to be exaggerated in their affection, nor to show it in unwise ways. The growth of the animal may be unhealthily forced, and its birth into individuality be hastened out of due time. Man, in order to fill rightly his place in the world, should seek to understand nature and work with her laws, quickening indeed their action by the cooperation of his intelligence, but not quickening it to the point whereat growth is made unhealthy and its product frail and out of season. It is true that the Lord of Life seeks human cooperation in the working out of evolution, but the cooperation should follow the lines which his wisdom has laid down. Well, all the implications that are in there will have to, come out and unfold. It's the implications that we're talking about here would really be astounding as to how this material that we're reading right now can be integrated and understood in the course of human lives, animal lives, the vegetable kingdom and mineral kingdom, and where we're at in the scope of, this evolution that we're talking about on the chart here. This this being the lowest of the 7 other planes above it. So you have this whole set. If you look at it, this is our set that we're working with. This is the constitution of man, the cosmic physical plane. But above this, there is the cosmic astral, then the cosmic mental, and the cosmic Buddhic, and so on. Above that. So we are at, a relatively, low level of evolution, even in where we're talking from today. And this is really, we're getting in touch with the ABCs in this kindergarten, that we're in down here, this school. And I can, for whatever reason, as I'm reading this, it feels like, we're very silly, creatures. We're very silly. And, until we're really ready to commit and learn and such, we're just going to remain silly until, major things start happening. So anyway, lots of implications. That was an incredible section, and we will get back at it tomorrow. I'm going to take the rest of the day and allow the absorption and see what comes out of this, and it's going to be great. It always is. All right, have a good one. See you soon.